everyone. This is Betty Boswell. We're so glad you could come in for the KidLit panel for the Faith and Fellowship Book Fest. I am a writer for children. In fact, I am writing, I just had a book come out yesterday. It's called Great Grandpa Fred and Caleb Moving Days, and it's an easy reader. It is a fun little short read for the first grade readers, maybe second grade readers, but I am very happy to be here. I'm also the president of the ACFW KidLit chapter of ACFW. So if you're a member of that organization and would like to know more, please let me know. So I'm going to let each of our authors give a quick rundown of their biography and their featured book for today. So we'll start with Rob.
Hello, my name's Rob Witzel. I am an author of a superhero series. Super Penguin 2 is my feature book. It is a sequel to Super Penguin. Um, the Probably the fastest way to explain it is I took superhero stories in a world where all the characters are animals, like a Kung Fu Panda or Zootopia, and merged those two genres together for my books. They're most popular with middle grade readers, but I did try to write it in a way similar to a Pixar movie where it's fun for all ages. There is some humor in there that might go over a kid's head, but nothing inappropriate or unsavory that I'd be ashamed to put in there. So it's a good family fun story with a lot of different lessons and stuff that I think apply to what we read and speak of the Bible.
Okay, Becca, give us an introduction.
Hello, I'm Becca Wierwille. I'm the award-winning author of the Road Trip Rescue series. My feature book is the first book in the series, but these are books for kids ages 8 to 12, so they're also middle grade. They've got themes of faith, friendship, adventure, forgiveness. So there are 3 books in the series in total, or there will be come spring. The two books are out now, but Road Trip Rescue is about a girl who goes on a road trip to try to find her lost dog. And she was born with one hand like I was. So I was also born with a limb difference, and it was really fun to put that into the story. So one of the big things I hope to do with all of my stories is to show kids that they are also wonderfully created for the unique adventures God has for them. So I like to show characters that are different, that go through real struggles and make mistakes sometimes so we can see God's transformation and how God works in their hearts.
Great. Let's see. Did Becky Van Vleet show up yet?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, sir.
Can you see
Okay.
me? Okay.
Give a
Yes.
brief introduction and your feature book.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Becky Van Vleet, and I'm an award-winning author also with a children's book series geared for ages 3 to 8. And I write stories about objects in my home that have been traveling through the generations. And I have a lot of these in my home. I'm a big believer in sharing family stories and traditions and recording them in different ways to be passed on to the next generations. And so when I started this series, I started out with a little skirt that's been traveling in our family. And that was my first one. And since that time, I've written 4 others. And my featured book is Angelina, the Traveling Angel. It's a Christmas book, and it features a tree topper that I have in my family that's been traveling around for 3 generations.
Very nice. Okay, since Karen wasn't here, I'm going to read her biography and a description of her book. Her featured title is Guess Who is in God's Family? Karen is a freelance writer and children's book author with a background in K-8 education. A grateful wife, mom, and grandmom, she is passionate about writing stories that grab and hold young readers' attentions, teaching them all about God's unchanging truths and his unchanging love for them. She wants every child to know their life matters. Her first children's book, Guess How Much God Loves You, was published through Ambassador International in 2022. Now a 7-book series, her newest book, Guess Who is in God's Family, was released in June of 2024. You can connect with Karen on Instagram, Facebook, Goodreads, and sign up for her free newsletter to be the first to know about updates, giveaways, and more things. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. People that are here, be thinking of some questions that you'd like to ask any of us, and we will answer those. But let me just start out with a couple of questions to warm up our speakers. So let's talk about your favorite place to write. Where's your favorite place to write? And we'll go with Rob first.
My favorite place to write is probably in my office that I'm sitting in now. As I mentioned, I write superhero stories, and so you can see behind me there's all sorts of Marvel posters and pictures and stuff, and I've just always been inspired by superhero culture, and so there's just a lot kind of going on in my office, but at the same time it kind of encourages me to keep doing what I'm doing.
And Becca?
I absolutely love writing outside if the weather cooperates. I live in Pennsylvania, so not every day is a day to be working outside, especially as we approach the colder months. But we have a picnic table on our back porch, so I love sitting out there on nice days. We used to live by a creek, not too far from a creek. We don't anymore, but that was awesome because they had a park there and there were park benches and I could listen to the creek. So you might have been able to guess that by my book covers. I love being outside, and so anytime I get to write outside is wonderful.
All right. And I write about anywhere. So while you guys are thinking on, I'll share a little bit about my writing process. I want you to think about your writing process. And again, if there's any questions, put them in the chat. So I am both an illustrator and a writer. So sometimes the pictures come first, sometimes the writing comes first, and sometimes it's a mixture of both. So we'll turn it over to Rob. What's your writing process like?
Mine is chaotic. I'm someone that struggles with ADD, and so having a process and focusing can be a struggle for me. But I think I try to start with praying just to help with my focus, but then sometimes in those moments of craziness and things, I think it also helps me come up with ideas, because ideas can pop in all the time, and so by not always being focused on one thing, it sort of helped me creatively along the way. But I do try to set aside time when there's less distractions, and to get my stories done.
Okay. Becca?
I usually get my ideas from all sorts of places. I feel like that's definitely a process that I love to invite God in. So like having him show me inspiration in like daily things and never knowing where ideas might come from. The idea from Road Trip Rescue came when I saw a photo of a dog eating an ice cream cone and then just started asking that question, what if? And whenever I do author visits and chat with students at schools, that's a question that I always have them repeat. The question, what if, is so powerful because that can take you in lots of different directions. So I start there. I'm not really a planner or a pantser per se. I kind of mix the two, what some people might call a plantser. So I kind of have like a loose plan that I follow going through with some of the main plot points. So I have an idea of the direction the story's going in, but then a lot of times it surprises me. The characters tend to get minds of their own and take the story in new directions. I tend to draft and write the first version of the story pretty quickly. I like to really immerse myself in that. And then revision is where I end up sitting for a very long time and enjoying time with my critique partners. And they help a lot. So that's kind of a little bit of my process. And I'm realizing I don't think we heard where Becky, where her favorite place to write is either.
Okay, yes. I'm sitting at my writing desk, as you can see it in my video, and this is my favorite place to write. But quite honestly, a lot of my writing takes place in my mind, and I just keep post-it notes all over the place on my nightstand, because a lot of times I'll have an idea to pop in my mind when I'm getting ready to go to bed, or I'm in bed and I'm thinking about things, or I'm at Walmart or in the car or whatever, and I'll just pull out my post-it notes from my purse, and I'm just always jotting things like that down, and just collecting those ideas. And as far as the writing process, once again, it's just kind of like what Rob and Becca have already shared, just um, praying and then just observing. And I feel like all the time my brain is in gear for just gathering ideas and what about this and what about that? Could I turn that into a children's book? But I'm also, I write adult novels as well, and I've written a nonfiction devotional book. So I just am always looking for ideas that just surround me, just really in my everyday walk.
Wonderful. All right. Did I get everybody with that question? All right. Um, Going back to the workshop that just ended, how has rejection played a life in your publication road? And we'll just start with Becky.
I wasn't able to see that session. I actually had an ACFW meeting in Colorado Springs where I reside, and I just finished that meeting not too long ago. But I have experienced rejections in different ways. Sometimes I'll just have to say that I've experienced that with just not even having an idea and just feeling stuck. And that almost feels like a rejection, like, oh my goodness, should I even keep writing? Maybe I've come to the end of my writing journey or something like that. But thankfully, the Lord lifts me out of that. But at one time, I was really excited about an agent for my nonfiction devotional book, and she got in touch with me, and I was just very excited. But when all was said and done, I was rejected, and I had to process that. But at the end of the day, it's just always trusting God for what the next steps are, and just knowing that He sees the bigger picture, and I have a very limited picture.
Okay. Rob?
So I'm a self-published author, so I don't have the rejection stories of agents or publishers and all that because I've done it the self-publishing route. But when I started my journey, I was absolutely crippled by imposter syndrome and just this idea of my story idea being silly or no one's going to care about it or it's a penguin in a cape, like what the heck. um, and so my getting started, it took a really really long time to get through that. And um, what helped me the most, I think, was being a part of panels like this and hearing other stories and listening to audiobooks and listening to other people that have, whether it was music or um, movies or authors or whatever it was. Almost everybody that's done anything had that imposter syndrome and still does. And so getting more comfortable with that and understanding that it's part of the process helped me tremendously. It took me probably 6 or 7 years to get my first book done just because of that idea of imposter syndrome and rejection that would come that hadn't even happened yet. Um, my second one, because a lot of those voices in my head were quiet and I was able to hear the positive more. It was a lot faster of a process to get my second book done because of those not so negative voices.
Okay. And Becca?
Like Rob, I'm also an independently published author. So that was a decision I made. Oh, not quite a year before Road Trip Rescue was published. But before that, for years, I had been on a traditional publishing path. I had had two different agents. And so I had had all of the agent rejections before getting those agents, and then between agents when I needed to find a new one after my first agent retired, lots of rejections from publishers. And I also had a couple of publishing offers from smaller houses that just, for whatever reason, I didn't feel like God was giving me a peace about. And I kind of came to a point where I had a lot of really good friends who were independently publishing children's books and doing it themselves, but they had their own publishing companies and they were hiring cover designers and hiring editors. And I really admired what they were doing. And I felt this tug on my heart, like, okay, I wonder if God is calling me to like consider this, because before I had never really thought of it. I just kind of thought when I started researching the industry, it was just what I'd found, and the research had taken me in that direction. So after doing a lot of research, that's when I chose to be independently published. And I'll say there's definitely, like both Rob and Becky were saying, no matter which path you're on, you are dealing with rejection, whether it's from agents and publishers or maybe even from readers. Like I remember my first 1-star review, and even though it was, I think the review was something like, this book felt like it was written for children, I didn't finish it. So I was like, yeah, it was written for children. But even so, even though like, okay, like that's going to happen. Not my book is not for everyone. I didn't write this book for everyone. It still hurts. And that imposter syndrome can feel really, really hard to overcome sometimes. I was listening to a podcast this week talking about how for authors, we often get asked questions that people wouldn't ask people in other professions. So like, how many books have you sold? And do you make a lot of money doing that? And have you written anything that I've actually read? Questions like that like you wouldn't probably go up to an accountant and ask. And so how much money do you actually make per year? Have you audited anything I know about? I think what it has done for me in my writing journey has led me to trust God more and leave it in his hands. Like if he wants these stories to be in readers' hands, that's something I can partner with him to do, and to not worry so much about the rejection that will be faced, and to know that it will come and there will be rejection. But there are also readers who are looking for these stories, and that God is always working to get them into the hands of readers too.
Okay, just a question for Becky. Are you independent or traditional published?
Actually, both. My traveling series are I'm traditionally published with Elk Lake, and also my World War II novel. With my devotion book, I self-published it. I wanted to try that path, and so yeah, I've been on both paths, and they both have pros and cons. I'm sure others could speak to that, but yeah, they've both been good paths and where I needed to be.
All right.
Betty,
Yes.
Jason here. We've got a question for Becca, but it's going to be valuable all around. Are you able to see that?
Yes, I was just going to get to that. Yes.
Then I'll leave you be.
Okay, so here's Kristen Joy Wilkes' question. I've tried to request Becca's books from my public library and Lori Benton's children's books as well, but my library system will not accept or purchase requests for self-published books unless they've been reviewed by a library journal or other big reviewer. What is the process for getting those big name reviews so that libraries can have your books? Please do so if you can, since I would love the kiddos in our area to be able to check out your books. I would also like to know for myself. I will address a little bit of that. I have books from Elk Lake and also from Mount Zion Ridge. My library will purchase from Elk Lake, but they will not purchase from Mount Zion Ridge because of some approval somewhere. So that's what I know. How about anybody else there? I'm going to let you just burst in, Becky or Becca or Rob.
Well, I haven't done a ton of research on getting those bigger reviews or like library journal reviews. From what I understand, I think those can be very expensive. So I believe for me, it would be a financial hurdle. And that's like, would be the biggest drawback, or what's making it not possible for me at this point. Unfortunately, I understand that libraries do want a way to screen books that they're bringing in and to make sure that they're high quality and meeting their standards. And it's hard because if you're accepting books from either a self-published author or a book from a smaller publisher, which really is what an independently published author is. A lot of times we are like basically just small publishers. It's hard to be able to screen all that, and it's not like the librarian can sit down and read all those books themselves. I understand that. It's also sad, right? Because if it is a financial issue for an author or for a publisher to be able to get their books reviewed by a big reviewer, but I'm not sure. Maybe there are other options that aren't just paid options. So I'd be interested if anyone knows more about that.
Okay. Anybody else want to address that question, Rob or Becky?
Well, I can address kind of half of the question. What I've gotten my self-published books in libraries, and it's been um, a lot of just conversations with the libraries themselves. I think once they get to know the author as a person instead of just a name on an email or something, it could help. And so I would encourage, if there's a book that you'd like and you have any kind of like our contact info is on this website, our names are on the website, our socials are on there. Um, you know, I think just connecting with librarians one-on-one helps with that.
Comment that says, check out indie author.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I wrote that comment, but I was writing it so fast on my iPad that I realized I made a lot of spelling mistakes. But I think there's a group called Indie Author Project, and they're larger in the States than they are in Canada, but they sort of work with some kind of a library journal, but you submit your book and they review it. And of course, there's a bit of a contest. But if they believe it's got all the check marks and whatever, however they analyze it, then they work with you to help you get it into the library system, and it's not a cost. So it's actually something I discovered last year. So Indie Author Project, it might be worth looking into that. Helps you to get your books in the system. So if somebody went to the library and asked for it, they can see, oh, the Indie Author Project has assessed this as saying it's worthwhile to, like, it's meets whatever standards they have to be placed in a library.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'd like to pipe in, if I may. Becca has a good point that getting the good reviews are sometimes very costly, but Midwest Book Review has a pretty good, pretty good name. It's not Publishers Weekly, but a lot of libraries do respect it, and they have a reasonable offer for a review. And then Kirkus, which is pricier, but it's not as bad as Publishers Weekly. If you get a Kirkus review, which I've used, libraries will pick up those books. And before you publish, you need to get an LCCN. I don't do it for all my books, but I don't have the same goals for them all. But if you get that ISBN, the LCCN, that all matters to librarians. So for better or for worse, that's my 2 cents.
I do have another question I'll get to in a second. Paige hasn't made a point that that it might be easier to get in with Kindle. I know some of my Mount Zion books have into the digital library system, and so that helps. But anyway, the other question from our audience that we need to address is marketing. So Rob, what do you do to market your books?
For me, I try to hustle with going to as many different events as possible. So I'm doing this today. When I'm done here, I'm driving to St. Louis, which is about 3 hours away, to attend a Comic-Con. With the superhero theme, I go to a lot of Comic-Cons because there's a lot of superhero fans at those, but I do a lot of book festivals too. I'm located in central Illinois. I've gone up to Chicago several times. I've gone as far east as Ohio, as far south as Georgia, and as far west as Missouri and Iowa. So for me, it's a lot of getting out there, talking to people one-on-one, and going that route. But I know a lot of people have gone other routes too online that have been fruitful too.
Okay, Becca, your marketing?
This is a fun question for children's authors because we have a unique challenge. We are marketing not to our reader. We're marketing to the parents, grandparents, teachers, the people who are going to buy books for the children. So that can be a challenge. My favorite way to market my books is actually a way that I can talk to my reader. So I love doing author visits at schools, and then homeschool conventions are also really fun. I've only done one, but I have a couple scheduled for next year because I write books, faith-filled books for kids. And when I go to a homeschool convention, that's filled with my audience. It's a bunch of families who are looking for books they can read aloud with their kids, that they can trust the content that's going to be in those books. So those are a really great place. And then also I do a lot of like private Christian schools. I've done a couple of public schools. But I think finding where our audience is, like Rob was saying, the Comic-Cons, that would probably not work for me, but that's awesome for a superhero book. Finding where your audience is and going to be with them is definitely my favorite because I like events are much more fun than email or social media marketing. Not a social media fan, so.
Hey, and Becky, marketing.
Yes, like Rob, I just really enjoy participating in events like I am today, right now, here with you all. And I also set up my books and set up like a display for selling my books and talking about my books at craft fairs and homeschool fairs and things like that. And like Becca, I love the school visits. I do that quite a bit. And I see Carrie Schmidt. Uh, in this meeting, and I just heard her speak this morning at my ACFW meeting for finding your readers and so that you can get your books to where the readers are. And she had wonderful things to say about that. And I'd love for her to just chime in if she is able to. But yeah, she had some great ideas.
All right. So Becca and Becky, how do you try to get into public schools with your books?
I actually have, as far as the public schools, I have mostly been in charter schools. Charter schools are very big in Colorado. We have quite a few of those, and they are public schools, but they are, I think, structured a little differently, and I just haven't had any trouble getting into those. With my World War II book, it's an adult book, but it's also geared for teenagers. And so I have been able to get into public schools with my World War II book, mostly because of the subject matter with when teachers are talking about World War II. And I've just been able to uh, make a connection with one teacher in particular. And then he just kind of opened up the door for me to get into other high schools.
Yeah, I think for public school, so I have like a little note on my website that is kind of like a disclaimer, like my books are faith-based books, but if I do a presentation in a public school, I won't talk about the faith aspect of the books. It's more like, here's what it's like to be an author. Here was the process of writing the book. So the presentation isn't a Christian presentation, quote unquote. It's a presentation by a Christian, but it's not like a sermon. Whereas if I'm speaking at a chapel service for a private school, that's a very different presentation. And then also I send order forms ahead of time for my books, and I have on there that I can't remember how I worded it, something about being faith-filled or Christian books or something. So I haven't done a ton of public schools. I think it also depends largely on the culture of that school and of that area and of the librarian, probably even. So,
If I can add one kind of best bet that I've done just this past couple weeks, I reached out to schools. They're doing the Scholastic Book Fair at the same time they're doing parent-teacher conferences. And so during that period of time, I was able to be present in the Scholastic Book Fair, had my own little table, and was selling books that way. So you get the kids and their excitement plus the parents with the wallet at the same time. And so I would encourage, especially if, in your hometown, if you can get a part of that and just kind of spread the word on your books locally. I think that was something that I hadn't thought of, that someone gave me that idea, and it's been pretty successful.
Okay. Before we get too far, I want you to have a chance to share if you've got any future plans or anything. So we'll start with Becca this time.
so the Road Trip Rescue series, like I said, I've got book 1, Road Trip Rescue. I've got book 2 just published in September, so it's pretty fresh still. This is about a boy who goes on a trip to Guatemala to try to save his brother from making a big mistake. And then book 3, which will be the last book in this series, is called Road Trip Redemption. I just released the cover yesterday, actually, so I'm really excited about that. That'll be coming out in April of next year. I will have a Kickstarter campaign going on in January as like a pre-launch for anyone who wants to get a copy early. So that's it for this series. And then I am working on a mystery series for kids next, but I don't have anything finished with that yet, but it's what I'm working on now.
Okay, Becky.
Yes, I have one more traveling book that will be coming out in 2025, Wally, the Traveling Watch, which is a pocket watch that has been in my family for 3 generations. So I've got to do a little story about this watch. And I'm also currently working on another adult novel, which will be inspired by my grandmother who immigrated to the United States from Slovakia in 1921, more than 100 years ago. And so I'm writing her story, and I'm hoping it will be published in 2025. So that's in the works right now. And I've been thinking about another devotion book. And if I do that, if I'm still praying about it and seeing where God takes me with that, it will be geared toward hymnals, the old hymns that I grew up with that oftentimes we're not singing anymore in churches. Not all churches, but some churches are more contemporary worship times with worship leaders and such. But anyway, if I do that book, and it's just kind of simmering on the back burner right now, it will be, like I said, about old hymnals and our songbooks.
Hey, Rob.
I have just started the process of writing my third book in the Super Penguin series. Also working on an audiobook. One of my favorite stories of my convention time, I was at this convention in Iowa, and it was a really poorly attended convention. It felt like a loss, but it's one of these stories where God kind of turns a loss into something great. Because I was at this convention that was going really poorly, and one of the convention guests, Sean Weiss, who played Goldberg in the Mighty Ducks movies for any movie fans. But I was able to spend some time with him. He has an incredible story of recovery and drug addiction and what he had to crawl out of, and a great story of faith, how he has turned addiction into following Jesus. And he was even in the movie Jesus Revolution, got baptized on the set of that movie, and just a really cool guy. But anyway, because this convention was going so poorly, I was able to have a conversation and build a friendship with him. And now he's recording an audiobook for my first Super Penguin story. So he's recording lines and stuff for it now, and hopefully early next year we'll have that released.
Wonderful. Becca, you mentioned crowdfunding. You want to tell us about your successes or failures with that?
Yeah, so when I decided to publish independently, I wanted to make sure I was hiring other people because I knew if I did it all myself, it would not be very good. So I wanted to hire editors, I wanted to hire a cover designer, I wanted to do it just like a traditional publisher would do. And I'm also a freelance editor, so I'm like, oh, I have these connections. I know kind of ideas of industry professionals I might want on my team, but it's expensive. All of those things are very expensive to hire. So rather than do it and then hope to make that money back eventually, I decided to do Kickstarter, which is crowdfunding. So it's basically like I use it almost like a really early pre-order. So people are pre-ordering the book and giving money for the book before I actually have the book. And then I can use that money to help fund my first print run. So I do actually pay for my cover design and my editing up front just because I want to be able to have a polished product to offer. And then I put it up on Kickstarter. So if you're interested in seeing what this looks like, if you search on Kickstarter.com for Road Trip Redemption, you can follow that page and you can kind of see what the page looks like when it goes live. Or you can search for Road Trip Rescue and see an old one. But basically, I just have the whole book up there. I have different reward levels, and it's a fun way that people can get involved. They can get their name in the acknowledgments. They can get special edition copies. And then the project for Kickstarter and a lot of crowdfunding platforms are like this. You have like a goal. So like my goal was $1,000 and it's all or nothing. So if we hit $1,000, then we made it. If we didn't hit $1,000, then no one's cards get charged and I didn't get any money. So it's like an all or nothing, kind of a fun buyer psychology type thing that you feel like you're really getting in on something. And I feel like people are joining with me in the publishing process, which makes it a lot of fun.
Okay, real quick, last words, Rob.
Yeah, I think just thank you for the book festival for allowing me to be here today and talk to you guys. If you're interested in Super Penguin, my website superpenguinbook.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well. But just thank you guys for listening and appreciate it.
Okay, Becky, last words.
Yes, I would say the same thing. I really appreciate the Faith and Fellowship Book Festival. I think this is my 5th year to participate, and I just really enjoy it. So thank you. And I just appreciate all of you attending this session. And I think my final words, I'll just put in a little plug for my website, which is www.beckyvanvleet.com, because I love family stories. And if you have a family story that you would like to share where I could put it out on a blog, I do feature books with family stories, but I don't have to feature books. I just invite all my reader friends and family and friends everywhere, if they have a neat family story that they would like to share so that it can be preserved for the next generation. It's on the internet. And just, yeah, get it in touch with me. I'd love to hear about your story, and we can talk about getting it scheduled.
Hey, Becca.
Yeah, I'll echo what Rob and Becky said. This has been so much fun. I'm thankful for the chance to participate. Thanks to everyone who was watching this. I'd love to continue to connect with you. If you have young readers in your life and want to hear like book recommendations, I recommend everything from picture books to a lot of middle grade. That's my focus. I do book giveaways, and then I also have a free gift. It's a audiobook and ebook road trip rescue devotions and family activities. So there's 20 devotions with road trip activities that you can do on the road with your family. So that's for free at my website if you sign up for my email list. That's beccawierwille.com. Or because I know Wierwille is impossible to spell, you can go to belovedchronicles.com. That's my publishing name, and that'll take you to my website. And then real quick, my friend Amanda Trumpauer, who's also a middle grade author, and I are starting a podcast. It's launching in January. It's called Ice Cream with Authors, and we're going to be featuring middle grade and chapter book authors, particularly gearing toward kids, kind of like little mini author visits. So again, if you have kids, grandkids, anything like that, feel free to, if you sign up for my email list, that's the best way to hear updates on that. But super excited to be able to have that soon.
All right. Thank you very much. We had one question about a child who wants to be an illustrator and looking for a program. I put in the name Ari Chung. He does a workshop for kids and that want to illustrate books. He's secular, but might be a fun place for the kid to start. And thank you all for coming. We had a great chat today. We had a pretty good we had a good audience, a great audience. And it was so good to see so many people. I know in the past I've had rooms where there was just a couple of people that visited with us, which I think Becky can speak to that from years ago. But this has been a wonderful time. Thank you very much.